I am Ken Owen, Executive Director of Media Relations at DePauw University and a 1982 graduate of DePauw. And it's a very, very exciting morning for all of us, culminating about a 9-month process that began last April when the Board of Trustees commissioned a search committee to come up with a list of presidential candidates. And today we are here to introduce the person who has emerged from that process as our new president. I'd like to just kind of give you a briefing on how this is going to go, and I want this to be as interactive as possible. Dave Hoover, who is the chairman of the Board of Trustees of DePauw University and is the president, chairman, and CEO of Ball Corporation in Denver, has made the trip in. He will be delivering opening remarks. He'll be followed by our new president, Brian Casey, and we're delighted that Brian is here with us today from Harvard. And Sarah Wallace, who chaired the search committee, will be available for your questions after Brian's opening remarks. And Dr. Bottoms is here as well. President Robert G. Bottoms, who's been DePauw's president since 1986, the longest-serving president in our history, is also in the room, and we hope that you'll have a chance to say hello to him. Anyway, we thank everybody who's watching via the webcast. We thank our media friends for coming out this morning on a busy day. And with no further ado, I introduce David Hoover.
Thanks very much, Ken. This is a real pleasure to be here today. It's a big day for DePauw University. It is the culmination, as Ken mentioned, of 8 or 9 months of work, ably led by Sarah Wallace, our chair of our search committee. Many of us are DePauw graduates in the room. My wife, Suzanne, and I graduated all the way back in 1967. We're happy to be here. And I think that as I say, this is a big step for our university. It's the first time in 22 years we've had a new president. And without further ado, I would like to introduce him to you, Dr. Brian Casey.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for being here today. I have to start briefly by saying how excited I am about becoming part of the DePauw community and about telling DePauw's story to a national and international audience. When this possibility first presented itself, I began an intensive study of DePauw. What I found was an absolute jewel of a liberal arts college enriched by a school of music. The institution is strong, it has programs of real distinction and merit, it has a distinguished faculty, and has spectacular facilities. Most importantly, however, I encountered a board of trustees committed to ensuring DePauw's position as one of the nation's finest liberal arts colleges. I also found a student body and an alumni body simply and fully in love with their college. There is a deep emotional commitment to DePauw that makes this a special place, an institution that has entered the national conversation about American higher education. So, this is the one time I can actually speak without having any responsibility. Here's what I think might be ahead of us at DePauw. First, we must continue to attract leading students from around the world. We also must continue to attract and support leading faculty and creating an academic environment in which students work vibrantly and directly with these scholars. That is the keystone, that's the foundation of a liberal arts college, and that's what we will do here at DePauw. We must remain committed to diversifying the student body and the faculty. The world is a complex, diverse place. We have a moral obligation to our students to ensure that they have a diverse student body and faculty. Most importantly, however, we must not be shy about speaking about DePauw's remarkable history and its strengths. DePauw has produced an inordinate number of CEOs, leading journalists, writers, artists, and musicians, and community leaders of every stripe. The university has shown itself to be a place of creativity and community. This is the story of DePauw, and as the institution's next president, I will not be shy about speaking about this in Indiana, and in the nation, and around the world. So without any further ado, I invite Dave to come back up and anybody else, and we could just have a few questions. I don't know where they're going to come from, but.
The floor is open.
Yes, ma'am.
President I'm Leslie Olson from Wish TV here in Indianapolis.
Good morning.
I understand you've been at Harvard, you're a Notre Dame grad. Are you from Indiana?
No, but obviously I've been pulled to Indiana. I arrived here in 1981 as a 17-year-old. No, as I said, I came here As a college student, I'm actually excited that my niece and goddaughter, who is also a current student at Notre Dame, is here. 3 of my nieces are currently in Indiana colleges, so there must be some Indiana-Casey connection that keeps popping itself up. And I'm very happy to be back here.
What lured you away from Harvard?
This possibility, I've said this to the search committee time and time again, I actually think this is one of the best stories in American higher education right before you. No liberal arts college in this country has invested more in its faculty and its facilities. It's reduced its student-faculty ratio to just a wonderful 10-to-1 ratio. It has built some of the finest facilities in the country. I would put the new Arts Center, the new Music Center, the new Science and Engineering facility, I would put these up on par with anything you'd see across the country. So I feel as if, and much thanks to Dr. Bottoms, the table is set. What has to happen now is someone needs to keep telling people about this. It is time to say, look at what this jewel, I said this before, there's a jewel of a liberal arts college in the middle of your state. And I want people around the country, when they're thinking about higher education, when they're thinking about where they want to go to school, when young scholars are thinking about where they want to do their work, I want them to be thinking about DePauw, and I want them thinking about it in the same breath as they're thinking about some of the greatest institutions in this country. So I think just the possibility and the opportunity was just too great to pass up. So.
Other questions?
Now that you've been named our president, how's this going to affect finishing up the job at Harvard, and when will you officially move into Greencastle?
I made a commitment to Harvard to finish out the academic year. I have a busy job there. They certainly want me to finish the things that I've started there. So I will remain at Harvard through the end of the term, which will be about June 7th, and then I think I will find a way to disappear for a few weeks and then show up in Greencastle right after the 4th of July.
President, you mentioned diversity as one of the points that you want to address. Do you find DePauw not diverse enough, faculty and student-wise?
Well, the question is, what is diverse enough?
How will you go about doing that?
You know, I wish there was a single bullet. I wish there was something to say, to increase diversity in faculty, you have to do this one thing. I think the first thing a president has to do is actually embody a commitment to diversity. So I will constantly come back to that point, make sure it's part of our message, make sure it's part of our institutional commitments. DePauw can both hire faculty, women and underrepresented minorities into the faculty ranks. But I think what might be interesting about DePauw, DePauw produces a large number of students who go off to get their PhDs. DePauw can actually be part of the solution to the underrepresentation of minorities, particularly in certain fields. So I think what we might want to do is bring in a more diverse student body and encourage them to go into academic and scholarly life. I think in some ways then DePauw is committed to diversity both in its consuming and placing faculty or placing scholars on its faculty, but also producing scholars. So I think both of those things would be something I'd be quite committed to doing. With the student body, I think, again, it's the same story. You have to get the DePauw story out to a larger audience, from around the country so we can make sure that the student body is diverse. And I actually like to say diverse across a number of metrics. You want socioeconomic diversity, you want racial diversity, you want a diversity of opinion, you want DePauw to be a place that is vibrant with people coming from different perspectives and challenging the faculty and the faculty challenging them from a lot of different angles. The worst thing to do is to bring a bunch of students into a campus and just introduce them to people just like themselves. If we do that, we're just not preparing them for the world in which they're going to head into.
Is that how it is now?
I don't think so. I mean, here I am speaking sort of basically from a position of ignorance. The student body has certainly, in the last 10, 12 years, been diversified quite nicely. The institution committed to the POSSE program. You're familiar with the POSSE program, bringing cohorts of students from Chicago into New York into the student body. So the institution has done a lot, and it should keep doing more. And you've got to keep pressing that point. So.
And I might just amplify. I think right now we're 17% in terms of diversity on campus. If you add in the international students, we're at about 21%. When Dr. Bottoms took office and I see Paul Watt, professor, shaking his head. I think we were in the low single digits. So we have come a long way. I think we are much more reflective of the world at large, but as Dr. Casey suggested, there's always work to be done, and you never really arrive, I don't think.
That's students or faculty or both?
Students, and I think, Paul, maybe you can help me with the faculty number. It's in the 15% range, I think, right now in terms of diversity. I could get you a hard number. Yeah, I can find out Leslie, but I think it's 15. And I should speak into the mic because we've got people watching on the webcast. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Jesse Hummelgarn, WGRE from DePauw University.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you have a plan to help support the diverse students that you're bringing in? A lot of students' concerns is that they're being brought in as diverse students, and then there's nowhere for them to go. There's no support system.
I think you have to both provide advising, a social, some sort of social network. I have to do some exploring. Obviously, I need to get to know the campus a little better, but there needs to be a variety of places in which students can gather, both with students who are like themselves and also gather in places where they'll encounter students that are apart from themselves. But I am sure that when the Posse program was brought in, there was complementary programming that surrounded
There
this.
is,
Right.
but it's only specifically more for those posse stuff.
Right. So obviously, what one needs to do is it needs to multiply, amplify that. And what one also has to do is promote a culture of tolerance, again, across a variety of parameters. So, I think as a president, one has to make sure that there's programming and facilities, but also that he embodies this sort of notion of tolerance and a free exchange of ideas and a free exchange of positions and a tolerance for difference. And that's certainly something that you'll be hearing a lot about that from me, okay? Yep.
What do you hope to accomplish in your first year?
In my first year, getting used to settings like this. Small colleges they're small communities, and I think my first job, and I'm actually looking forward to this, is to learn, is to listen to students, to listen to the board, to listen to faculty. I want to have, I'm looking at, there's a group of faculty back there. I want to have faculty over for dinner all the time. I clearly have an obligation to go carefully in a community that has its own traditions, its own culture, and to learn. As a matter of fact, I have the chairman of the board of trustees who sits back at me who keeps telling me that. Just, this is your first year, why don't you learn about the place? So, he calls me every night and says this. So, I think, obviously I want to, okay, sorry, Dave. I'm chomping at the bit to do a lot of things, but I think my first obligation is to really get to know this community and get to know the students. So I've actually gotten a number of emails from your organization already, so I expect to spend a little time with you guys. So.
Any other questions? The audience?
Okay, sounds good. Well, it looks like we have one more.
Please, no.
Okay.
Looking at our list over here.
Oh, well, there.
What do you feel like you need to do between now and beginning of the next school year to prepare?
Again, I think a quiet learning process. You have a sitting president who I greatly admire and respect and have actually begun to consider a good and close friend. He needs to finish out his time. He needs to make decisions that are appropriate for him to make. I will quietly find ways to talk to him. But I think a quiet learning phase is the appropriate first step to allow Dr. Bottoms to finish out what I think has been a glorious and honorable tenure. And anything I can do to help him is something that I'm committed to him. And he is committed to me to get out of my way when I come in. But we'll keep talking. But I think this is a period of quiet learning. And my friends back at Harvard have a lot of things that they want me to do. So I think I'll be quite busy back in Cambridge for a couple months.
Sir, speaking of Harvard, we've heard DePauw referred to as the Harvard of the Midwest. What, if anything, is there about Harvard that you think ought to be brought to DePauw?
First of all, they share some qualities, but they're remarkably different. I mean, Harvard is a large, sprawling institution, but Harvard's commitment to scholarly excellence, and you can feel it in every decision that is made in hiring junior faculty, in tenure decisions, in building academic programs. This is Harvard is an institution that is unapologetically committed to being just the best in the world in whatever it does. I think that is a perfectly appropriate and fair goal for DePauw to cling to. And if we're going to be one of the preeminent liberal arts colleges in the world, then we should hold ourselves up to the exact same standard. We should not build any academic program that we could not say, this is as fine a program as put up in the world, and we are going to bring we're just going to bring faculty in that are just dynamic and interesting. We're going to support them. One thing I think DePauw might be able to do in ways that Harvard can't, it's being a small community, you can nurture junior faculty in ways that can be difficult sometimes at Harvard. One thing that DePauw can do that Harvard has some struggles with is just making sure that students are constantly interacting with faculty. You know, that's a perennial challenge at Harvard. So I plan on doing a couple things at DePauw better than they're done at Harvard. Believe me.
What's your background in fundraising? How important is that going to be?
I certainly did a lot of it at Brown when we were building certain programs. It's interesting, I get that question a lot. A lot of my friends are like, do you really want to go raise money? And if fundraising was, you just land in some stranger's living room and ask them for money, that strikes me as really unappealing and probably would be very unsuccessful. I'm looking at the head of development right now, and she's yes. But if you have, what you're doing is you're asking people to be part of something bigger than themselves, something that will outlast them, something that can actually transform students' lives and then can transform the nation. And so I'm really happy to start this because, if we start building programs and we want to enrich the programs that are in place that are just terrific, I am willing to get on the road and just say, you better be part of this. I'm just, they ought to be. How exciting is that? So, yes.
Can you tell us briefly how you found out that you were the next president and your reaction?
Actually, I officially found out while Dave left a phone message on my cell phone when I was actually on an airplane. So I was actually flying out here not quite knowing if it was fully official. I was glad that when I landed that it was official. So, because my family's coming in, I was like, so the fact that there was a car at the airport bringing me downtown, I thought was a good sign. I'd talk to Dave. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Everyone will be available for individual interviews. And thank you, Dr. Casey.
Thank you
Welcome
all.
to DePauw. Thank you all for being here, and have a great day.